Howdy out there, folks. Today I thought I would just go over my Arrow video, Imprint video, and Kino Lorber video releases. Of course, they're Blu-ray, 4Ks, etc. But in any case, let's jump right in. So, of course, starting off here, 12 Monkeys. I have the Blu-ray release of this with the slipcase, of course. And big fan of the film. I think Terry Gilliam, arguably this is his best movie. Really well written time travel sci-fi drama. Then of course we've got one of the OGs, American Werewolf in London, the famous John Landis film. Very grainy. I don't have the 4K, but this Blu-ray in the beginning is just incredibly grain heavy. It settles down, and I think overall the picture looks pretty good, certainly better than previous releases that I've seen or owned. But I don't feel the need to go out and get the 4K. I wonder if the print is just what it is. Great transformation scene, arguably the best werewolf transformation scene ever done. Rick Baker, of course, did that. And what's interesting is I believe Rick Baker was working with Rob Bottin on The Howling, and then John Landis gave him a call and said, hey, I'm going to make that werewolf movie now. And so Rick basically begged off of The Howling and just assured Joe Dante that his disciple, his protege, Rob Bottin, was more than up to the task. And of course he was, because The Howling's effect work looks great too, and indifferent. But Rick Baker, he did amazing work on that film, American Werewolf in London. I would put this transformation scene all done by way of practical effects and photographic trickery. It's better than anything I've seen on the CGI front. Then we have, of course, Donnie Darko. This is the 4K Blu-ray that came out, and of course they had to issue a replacement disc on one of the films because it has the the director's cut and the theatrical cut. I actually kind of go back and forth on which one I prefer. I love the universe that he built, and I think overall I do like the director's cut, but I can understand why people might prefer the theatrical release instead, because it's a little more mysterious. Gas, Food, Lodging. Fantastic film directed by Allison Anders and starring the wonderful Ione Skye and Fairuza Balk. Great film. Legend. Tim Curry has never been more amazing than he was in this film. The effect work, again, done by Rob Bottin, is just amazing. I think it's probably one of the best makeup jobs Rob ever did. And Tim Curry was terrific in the role as Darkness, I believe. People often assume he was playing the devil, and in fact he wasn't. He was sort of an offshoot of that character. Then we have Loveless, one of the first, if not the first, movies starring Willem Dafoe, and I believe this was more or less a student film with Montgomery and Catherine Bigelow. And it's definitely very stylistic. Hyper stylized, one might argue. There's not a whole lot that goes on, but I love the mood, and Willem Dafoe just looks so Willem Dafoe-esque in that movie. He's great in it. Over the Edge, one of my all-time favorite coming-of-age, teenage angst films, and I've, of course, reviewed this along with pretty much all the others you're going to see. And I've said more about it on that other video, but I love this film. I thought Matt Dillon just again showed why he was given more parts after that. He was terrific in that. Then, of course, RoboCop. I own the Scream Factory RoboCop 2 and 3. I own the Arrow Video RoboCop 1. This is the best of the bunch. Although, as I point out in my Scream Factory collection video, I like aspects of RoboCop 2 a lot. There's some really inspired stuff in there. Sleep. This is a really interesting German, very Lynchian, independent horror film, low budget. Very, very good. I enjoyed the hell out of this movie. I thought it was terrific. Then Larry Cohen's The Stuff. This is a fabulous film. Very weird. One of Larry's best, I think. It's very sharp writing, as per usual with him, and funny. I think it does run on a little long. The ending sort of loses its momentum, but it's still a fun film. It's a great film that you can pair with The Blob. Tremors. You know, this is a classic monster movie. I remember seeing it when it first came out and really liking it. Kevin Bacon, Fred Ward, Michael Gross, Reba McEntire. It's a great flick. True Romance, Tony Scott directed film, Quentin Tarantino written flick. Great. I think one could argue that the sum is not as good as the individual parts, and that's sort of a criticism I think a lot of Quentin Tarantino's movies end up getting, is that he knows how to create dramatic scenes, but sometimes he doesn't know how to stitch it all together in a sort of parsimonious fashion that can tell the narrative with, little to no fat. He tends to be a little self-indulgent, but there's no denying QT's love for cinema, his knowledge of cinema, and his passion. I mean, we're lucky that he's made the movies he has, because he's done some amazing work. He's definitely a great director. Then we've got Imprint. And here we have The Apostle, starring Robert Duvall. And this was, of course, a passion project for Mr. Duvall. Plays an Episcopalian preacher, I believe, Pentecostal maybe. I can't remember which type, but he's crazy. He's absolutely batshit crazy in this movie, but passionately so, and not without some strange code. Then we have, and I apologize for the noise, we have Barfly. This is a wonderful Barbette Schroeder film starring Mickey Rourke before he went crazy with the plastic surgery. He's very good at it. He plays Charles Bukowski, basically. Henry Chiminski is the fictitious sort of realization of Bukowski, but great flick, and it has the Bukowski tapes on it as well, which are like 4 hours of interviews with Charles Bukowski and Barbette Schroeder, and he did that to sort of build the character. I think it's a terrific film, very interesting, and Bukowski, while he was a misogynistic asshole, there's no denying he was a great writer. The Beast, very interesting Afghanistan Soviet war film. It's a little bit not off-putting, but it takes you out a little bit to see, all of the American actors that they cast, and they of course speak English, but you just have to sort of go with that. I think Jason Patric in particular does a great job in his part, and there's a really interesting documentary about the making of that film. It's directed by Kevin Reynolds, who of course went on to do Waterworld and Prince of Thieves, Robin Hood, with Kevin Costner. And, I think he's got talent. I'm not a huge fan of some of those other movies, but I thought The Beast was particularly good. Breakdown, Kurt Russell. This is Jonathan Mostow, who of course went on to do Terminator 3, which I think was pretty good. It's not great, but it had its moments. I think Breakdown's his best film. I enjoyed this quite a bit. Kurt Russell was perfect in the part, and of course has the wonderful J.T. Walsh in it. May he rest in peace. He was a great character actor. Drugstore Cowboy, Matt Dillon. Just an amazing film. This had James Remar in it as well, Heather Graham, Kelly Lynch, based on a William S. Burroughs story and directed by Gus Van Sant. Love this flick. I think this might be Gus's best film. Then The Gambler. This is a really interesting film starring James Caan. It was remade with Marky Mark and John Goodman. I haven't seen the remake, but I think that this film is definitely a classic 70s cinema, grimy, kind of seedy characters. Feels like a Scorsese film. James Caan did an amazing job, and it's interesting, De Niro, of all people, really wanted that part, and he was passed over for James Caan. I think Caan did a great job. Jacob's Ladder. I personally am a big fan of Tim Robbins, terrific actor. And Adrian Lyne, of course, as the poster indicates, director of Fatal Attraction, one of my all-time favorite thrillers. I think Jacob's Ladder is arguably one of the best horror films ever made. It's a little confusing. I think some people got hung up on the ending. I thought it all worked. I really enjoyed it. It's a movie I go back to often. The visuals are amazing. Atmosphere is terrific. And again, the acting. Danny Aiello has a bit part in it as well, and I always loved him. Loved his work. Every movie he was in, he just would elevate the proceedings. Then we've got Johnny Got His Gun, arguably one of the most depressing movies ever made. It's just incredibly dour and just stricken with constitutional melancholy. Music of Chance. I'm a big James Spader fan. Mandy Patinkin is also in it. M. Emmett Walsh, independent film from the early 90s, based, I believe, on a play. I enjoyed it. It's not perfect, but I think it's a very interesting character study, and obviously, fairly allegorical at that. I enjoyed this film. Nobody's Fool. Paul Newman in one of his last performances, and as the poster indicates, worn to perfection. He was so good in this film. Jim Sheridan. This is the 4 Irish Films box set, and it's interesting. I loved In the Name of the Father and The Boxer. I still have not seen My Left Foot or The Field, but I've heard great things. This was one of their bundles. I probably wouldn't have bought it if it wasn't part of the bundle that I got, but it's great. And he's a terrific director, and I think obviously those 4 films are pretty solid work. I think The Field might be the least critically accepted as a great film, but it's got Sean Bean in it. How bad can it be? Then we have David Lynch's The Straight Story. This movie is amazing. I think it's just a terrific meditation on, aging and, just the difficulties of maintaining good relationships with your family, loneliness, and regret. I think it's one of Lynch's best films. And then, of course, Ken Russell's this film. I won't say it because I think the algorithms pick up on that kind of word and might get me flagged. So very, very interesting, stylistic, and really over the top, quite frankly, depiction of that industry by one Teresa Russell, who's quite game in the part. And then we have Kino Lorber. We've got Breaking In. This is a terrific Burt Reynolds vehicle. I believe the screenplay was written by John Sayles. Again, one of my favorite screenwriters out there. Escape from Alcatraz, Clint Eastwood. Don Siegel film. Really solid movie. It's aged very well. In some ways, I actually watched this recently and thought it was better than Shawshank and The Green Mile. I feel like Frank Darabont owes a big debt to this film. I think they did a terrific job, and Clint was perfect in it. Eastern Promises, another Cronenberg film, one of my favorites of his. Viggo Mortensen, what can we say? Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Again, this is, I would say, Jim Carrey's best film. Written by Charlie Kaufman, directed by Michel Gondry. Very interesting film. I think Kate Winslet's in it as well. It's probably my favorite Jim Carrey film. Hard Target, guilty pleasure. I'm not a huge Jean-Claude Van Damme, but there was just something about the combination of him and John Woo that really had me enjoying the hell out of this movie, and it looks great on 4K. The Hunter, Steve McQueen's final film. Very interesting and effective stunt work and practical effects. Steve McQueen was great, despite the fact that he was dealing with terminal cancer during the filming of this. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. This is the remake with Donald Sutherland. Beautifully lensed, really good movie, actually. I think it's probably the best Body Snatcher movie, although I kind of go back and forth on that, because I think the one directed by Abel Ferreira and I believe written by Larry Cohen, I like a lot too. And then we've got Lost Highway, another David Lynch film. Inscrutable, but over time I've found that I've come to like it more and more with each passing viewing. Robert Blake, good God, he was just creepy as hell. Misery, one of the best Stephen King adaptations out there. James Caan, again, terrific performance. Kathy Bates, well-deserved Oscar win, I believe, for her part. And then, of course, Stick, which is a Burt Reynolds vehicle, sort of Florida noir. Not a great movie, but I enjoyed it and had some great stunt work, practical effects, as per usual. And I think it looks, and even though the soundtrack is very dated, I still love the sound of the film. I think it's just, it feels steeped in sort of dripping Florida noir. I really enjoy the movie. So on that note, I believe that is it. I'll finish up here with two Blue Underground releases that I've got. God Told Me To, another Larry Cohen film. Weird movie. Very weird, but some really good moments of drama in it, and the dialogue is just terrific. I mean, again, Larry Cohen could write like few could. The Final Countdown, kind of a Twilight Zone-esque what-if story. The 4K Blu-ray looks really good. I enjoyed that movie quite a bit. Martin Sheen, Kurt Russell. It's a pretty good little flick. It reminds me like an extended Twilight Zone episode. So on that note, I do hope everyone out there is well. Please stay safe, be kind, and by all means, keep watching good cinema.